Hello, good evening. Welcome to the show. This is the Friday edition of The Couch with me, Amma Pratt. This evening is a personality profile edition of the show. You know that on this show, we like to meet interesting people who are doing amazing things. You know that we believe in brightening the corner where you are, making impact, making a difference, changing this world. Tonight's conversation, we get to meet somebody who is doing just that. Now, her name is Coumba Toure. I'll read a little bit of her profile for you just so you get to know her a little better. Now, she has over 20 years of professional work experience in the development sector. She's a women's rights activist, the kind that I love. She's an author, she's a development practitioner, an avid storyteller, and a Pan-Africanist. Coumba is passionate about water prices in the West and Central Africa. She's a high-ranking member of the steering committee of the Alternative Water Forum in Senegal. She was born and raised between Mali and Senegal. Very interesting stuff. We'll talk about that. She's a grassroots professional who understands community issues and supports civil society organizations and movements with their community entry strategies. She publishes children's stories. She organizes arts events targeting children's minds through Kumbati, her new production house and association, Falia, a collection of educators and artists. She designs popular education programs focusing on women and children. She's the chair of the board of Trust Africa Foundation, ASI Baoba, and the coordinator of Africans Rising for Justice, Peace, and Dignity. She has extensive experience facilitating expressions, engaging young people, designing, implementing, evaluating training programs to promote human rights and joy, especially those of women. She has worked with organizations such as the Institute for Popular Education in Mali, the 21st Century Youth Leadership Movement in Selma, Alabama, and the Youth for Environmental Sanity in Santa Cruz, California. She's a member of the African Feminist Forum and the Peang Collective. She has served on the board of the Urgent Action Fund for Women in Africa. She's a loving mother, a sister, and a daughter. Those will do the drum roll, right? Drum roll. Hello.
Hello, Miss Pratt.
It's great to meet you.
Great to meet
you.
you.
And you look amazing.
Look at you. I see you.
I see you more. Wow. Wow. What? Let's start from the top. You were born and raised between Mali and Senegal. You have to explain that. Surely, you have to explain that.
you know, I always say, if we have to have a passport.
Right.
But the truth is, as Pan-Africanists, we know that the borders between our countries are not real. At least from my family and many families that I know of these countries, we go back and forth.
Right.
On generation and over generation, you know, we are born in one country, raised in another. That one is born in Mali, raised in Senegal. So from me, my mother to my grandmother. And in our own families, we have siblings that have different nationalities. I can be Malian and my brother and sister are Senegalese. Same thing in my mother's generation and so on. So really, the truth is that when we talk about Pan-Africanism, it's not just big ideas. It's also about the lived experience of people who cross these borders, have families, have businesses, and need to be part of a united Africa. It's not just an ideal. Right. It's a need, for a physical need for people like me.
Right. Wow. Right. Okay. So, I mean, immediately, I can understand why Africans Rising, right, is deeper to you than just, they say, a 9 to 5, isn't it? Let's talk about Africans Rising. Let's take it from how you got involved, and then we can talk about exactly what it is.
Yes. I guess being a Pan-Africanist, like you say, is not just like an ideal or a job. It's a belief. And I would say that beyond the family piece and the knowledge of knowing that people from different countries can be the same people, There is also that I've grown into my own consciousness of Pan-Africanism, and that I've been helped by people. The Institute for Popular Education is an organization that I worked with when I, started very young. And one of our work was to build relationship with people of African descent outside of Africa. That's why the connection with Selma, Alabama. People would always wonder like how and why. But we went in 1996 on a trip to learn about African identity outside of Africa, knowing that we are African, but knowing also that there are other Africans that lives outside of Africa, and that we needed to understand what their lives were like, but what their history has been. And there we were guided by, extraordinary people like, a woman named Coumba Toure, and her husband Hank Sanders. Of course, they all became family to this day. But they took us through the south of the U.S., Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, North and South Carolina, Louisiana. And we learned by meeting with farmers, people in churches, in universities, artists, that when we talk about Pan-Africanism, it's also not just the borders that were built between us as countries, between Senegal, Mali, Ghana, but also the borders that has been built between us and other Africans that we call global Africans right now, because Africans are all over the world for different reasons, and some very painful reasons, that we build that consciousness of being one people and having a shared stories, shared history that needs to be reconnected. So yeah, my work with Africans Rising is about building solidarity among Africans, wherever they are. And when we say Africans, we mean African all over the world. And so this is an engagement, this is a promise, to our people that we are engaged in, and that we know we need to fulfill.
Absolutely. And it's so important what you say about building solidarity, for all of Africans everywhere. I mean, the obvious question then becomes, to what end? The solidarity that we are building, to what end? Because today, Africa faces real challenges, and when I say Africa, forgive me, but I mean those of us who are actually within exactly, those of us within that geographic limitation of the space, there are real challenges that we face, that solidarity, unity, these are ideas that have been espoused since before I was born.
Yes.
That's the solution, right? So the solidarity that we are building, should we get happy? Should we get hopeful that ultimately this is the solidarity that would lead us to the unity that will solve the problem?
Yes, solidarity to several ends. First of all, when we are still today, that's the thing that we need to understand. What we are talking about today, when you take people of African descent, whether they're on the continent or outside the continent, we make the vast majority of poor people if you compare to our own numbers. And that is not something that just happened by, by chance or by mistake. It is by design, and it is manufactured. There is no reason for people in Ghana, in Mali, in Senegal to be in the poverty that they live in today, when we know the resources that Mali, Ghana, and Senegal has. So there is something that, you don't have to be any big politician or scientific to just say, okay, here we are, a certain number of people living on a ground that is extremely rich, and we are in misery. What is it? And there's several explanations. Of course, we have a historical explanation of it, that systems have been built historically that work only to extract and take away resources and doesn't care about people who are living here. To this day, we have a very small percentage of gain from our own resources in all of these countries. And I say very small, you're talking about around 3%. That's ridiculous. In 2022, in free countries, right. Independent countries. So when I say solidarity, is solidarity to reclaim what is ours. Right. Is solidarity to be able to live at a certain level of dignity, not just few people, but all of us have the possibility and the chance to live in a dignified manner. It's not far-fetched, given the resources that we have. Just make the calculation. It's not far-fetched. Most of the time people think of it, you look around, you see the poverty, and you're just like, oh, you know, there's not much we can do. This is how it is. It's not true. We have far more than what we need to live in decent way. So why aren't we not? So solidarity to do that. It's a solidarity to make sure African people live in a state of dignity. We can live in peace, in justice, and in dignity, just provided that we shift and change the system that we work in today. The whole world work in a model where we feed them. They can accumulate even resources that they don't need to use right now. They can be safe for the next generation while they're pumping us. Right. Africans have to be united in solidarity to change that.
Totally ridiculous.
And no one little country can do this by themselves. No. We have to come together and unite and be in solidarity to make it happen. Right. So if we want to face a global economy, a global model of functioning, we have to do it in unity and in solidarity. So that's the purpose of being in, one of the big purpose of being in solidarity.
Right. Now, you just said something right now. You said, you used the word reclaim, you know, which takes us straight to reparation. And that's a big debate locally here in Ghana. I think a couple of weeks ago, actually no, only last week, our president spoke about that.
Yes.
And the reactions have been very mixed. People feel all sorts of ways about that. Let me pick your brain on this. How do you feel about reparations?
You know, let's take it at a simple, very simple level. If today somebody comes and attack you, wants your shoes and your cell phone, you know, you don't want them to take your shoes. But somebody wants your golden shoes because they're gold actually. And they have the means, they have the arms to take it away from you. And in that process, they could kill you or kill parts of your families. Do you think your children or your grandchildren would need reparation from that?
Absolutely.
Let's take it simply.
Absolutely.
Because people take it to big levels. Oh, you know, we don't know who did this and who are we going to pay and who participated in it. Let's be clear. There's been theft. There's been killing. And there are people who have been responsible, and some of those people are not just individual people. They've been sent by government. These are things that are written. There are evidences.
Documents.
There are documents. People were sent. They had armies to do their job. So it's not something just fluffy. And the European governments need to face the reality. I mean, you cannot, for example, today, the government of Ghana might take some loans from, the IMF, and they are.
Right. That's a big conversation.
It's a big conversation.
Right.
Okay. Can we say tomorrow, in few years or in few generations, or finally we don't owe that money because it was not us?
No
Do we have that choice as African?
No
So why could they have that choice as government? You cannot absolve a government. It's still there. It didn't die. Nobody dissolved. None of these countries have been dissolved yet. France still exists as a government.
Right.
Germany still exists. Belgium still exists. The USA still exists as a government. So what they've done before cannot be absolved as long as they exist. Until they say, okay, there is no more French government, then we don't have to talk about reparation by French government. But as long as the French government exists, they have to respond to what they did under colonization as a government, because the people they sent were representative of their government to rule these countries. So, to me, the question of reparation is a necessary question for peace, for global peace, for the world. Reparation is not about Africans. It's about changing the dynamic in which the world operates and has been operates in the last 500 years. And it's a way of operating that is still continuing in different format,
Right.
and it's taking us to a precipice. It makes an unjust and unpeaceful world. How could the world stay peaceful based on injustice? We have to unravel that. So yes, there's been here and there government saying, some of they don't like to apologize because they're worried about if they do formally what
An
it
admission
means.
of guilt.
What it would mean. People
Right.
we express regret. We did this and that.
I think it's Tony Blair who famously said, it's a scar on the conscience of the
Something.
world.
Those
Yeah.
euphemisms.
Yeah.
No. We
Yeah.
need to say things for what they are. If you've stolen something, and the great thing is that we have some simple evidence, and I think one of the thing would be like the artifacts and the object from Africa. You come and stole something, you put it in your museum or somewhere. Now people are saying, bring it back.
It's not yours.
And it's like, oh, we'll do a permanent loan to the government of Namibia
No way.
of their own stuff. They'll bring one or two things. I mean, like, you stole things, just bring it out, give it back. It's as simple as that. All this conversation about so where and what and who.
You can't keep it well. You would destroy it.
If I stole your cell phone and you said give it back, I'll be like, you don't know how to hold your cell phone?
Yeah.
People of Africa made these things. They created it. How comes people who created something cannot take care of it? So sometimes let's just be very clear and very simple that something has to change in the minds of everyone, starting with Africans themselves, including here in Ghana. I think it's a big win when the president of Ghana dare to tweet about reparation. Most of the presidents of the countries in Africa will not. They know what they expect from the relationship with the European.
Right.
So it's actually a courageous thing to do, to stand for reparation.
Right. So I mean, that conversation brings us immediately to the bigger conversation of African arts, African poetry, African culture, all the beautiful things that wealth within themselves, because it speaks to our heritage, it speaks to who we are, our identity, all of that. And these are all things that you are very big on. So let's take it one at a time. Let's talk art. Let's talk poetry. But for me, the chunk would be your interest in children's books and things like that. Because there's a very popular saying here in Ghana. We say, catch them young. Catch them young, you know. So let's start from there. Let's talk about the African culture and the way it finds expression in our art, in our poetry, and in our storytelling.
I think to start with, the most critical work that we have at hand is to put content in the education of our children across Africa, but also in global Africa, for children to know, one, their history, to understand Africa as our philosophy and ways of being. And I'm not talking about just new things, but we need to trace back to ancient Egypt and even further than, pharaonic times. You know, when people talk about Africa and about culture and about, we are stuck many times in, the last maybe, 500 years, because it's as if we started existing when we had this, sad encounters with European. Africa didn't start existing when we met,
years ago.
with slavery. This is not our departure point. It's as if I look at you, or someone who's like 30 years old, and I start talking about their story and their life about the last week of their life.
No.
Am I talking about them?
No.
Well, this is just the last week of Africa's life since slavery. We can go way back, and we can find ways of organizing, ways of being, and we can go back to what is positive and to what we can grow and bring differently. Going back doesn't mean doing the same thing. It's about finding a source and developing new. So that's the critical piece of education. And there's very little. I have to say that our education systems across this continent is still teaching us the wrong things. So that's where the big work is. And to me, that's where also my work with storytelling, with writing books for children, with publishing, my engagement in making visible the work of Perang, with actually your fellow Aikwe Arma, who lives in the same village with us, with whom we work, is about that part of the work. Now, art, poetry, music, dance, film, that is where we find a way to express ourselves, and to be heard and to be felt in ways that just speaking, conversation, discourse, politics, economic cannot do. On this trip in Ghana, I think the place that I've been the most touched is through the art. We went to Ada and met with your fellow artist, Kwame, who's doing something amazing with the sculptures. And we're just like, yeah, there is a way in which we can express not only our history, our stories, but also our values and our culture beyond even the reparation that we need. And there is a way in which we can engage each other in thinking how to move forward. And that way is given most of the time through art. So, and we find this all over. If we want to know, I was invited in the conference for reparation that, your president opened. And the reality is that we see and we know that we need the art to be able to speak about this, to be heard. The case I presented there about the Coumba Toure. Coumba Toure is a military camp in Senegal. 1st of December 1944 is bombed by French. Between 300 and 400 military West African people are killed. These are people who went to help France fight German. They are demobilized by the end of the war because they want to whiten the army. They don't want black people to be the one reclaiming that they helped them. So they send them back. These are people from all over West Africa. They call them the tirailleurs sénégalais, but they're from Mali, from everywhere. They're in Coumba Toure. They just demand to be paid their due. They're cold, gathered, unarmed, and they're bombed. Coumba Toure is a film by Ousmane Sembène, Thiaroye 44. The only way we knew about it is through the filmmakers, because this is not something that is taught in our classrooms.
It won't find itself in any textbook.
It's not in the textbook. So it is the artist.
Right.
It is through the music that we learn some of these things. And when people say about reparation, there are evidence. The name of the soldiers are written before they board this boat to get to Coumba Toure. We're asking them to excavate. If we excavate, they're talking about 35 people who died. The French government. We understand that if you excavate, you know about 35 deaths and 300 deaths. You just have to count the skulls.
That's all.
It's simple. Bring out the document. Right now, the documents, they used to belong to the French. Now it has passed on to the Senegalese government. There is an MP at the National Assembly that put a bill to say, open the document. Papers are here. So evidence are there. Pay these people just their due. So what arts help us do is, one, to give access to information, at least an opening to information, because of course a film is a film.
Right.
But once you know that something happened, then you can start digging and then you can look for the information.
It's an entry.
It's an entry point.
It's an entry.
And it's a great entry because it enters us through our heart.
Right.
It's not just the mind.
Right.
You feel it, you understand, and you start thinking, okay, there's something I need to do about this. So, of course, the call is that our government heavily invests in the education of our people and in art, because that's where things start.
Absolutely, absolutely. So speaking to you right now, I'm taking with me the points that art is what literally fills those gaps, the gaps that words sometimes leave with us. Some things just make logical sense, some things just don't make, but sometimes we just need to feel it, right? And it's art that does that. Wow, that's a beautiful way, to think about it. How long have you been in Ghana this time?
It's been almost a week, intense week. Yeah, intense week.
What brought you to Ghana?
The conference about reparation.
Right.
I was invited to come and join. Several people organizing the Global Africa with the African Transitional Justice Center. came together with different organizations to say, let's pull together people who are working in this subject. And it's been a wild moment. I think Pan-Africa TV should be there. You will miss amazing people.
No, we will miss it.
It's incredible. I mean, of course, the government of Ghana was represented, the AU and so on.
Right.
But you had, amazing journalists. The sister that worked on the 1619 project, journalists, Hilary Jones, all of these people who have been forever working on Pan-Africanism, on reparation, on justice, have been there. People who were in Durban at the World Conference on racism. Dr. Horace Campbell, Dr. Garvey, Dr. Randall Robinson. I mean, I could name it, just like so many incredible people who work in different fields, in different ways, but all of us have the understanding and the consciousness that we are at a very critical time, that there are possibilities and opening because young people across this continent are ready.
Right.
Are ready. They're like, it's been almost 60 years of independence.
Right.
Where are the promises?
Right. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, where are the promises?
Where do we go from here? And these are very important conversations that, need to be had. They might seem, or they might be uncomfortable for some quarters, but they're important for us as Africans. And like you rightly said, it's important that our leaders lead, some of these conversations. There's a conversation going to happen today too, at the headquarters of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, on feminism and Pan-Africanism. Let's talk about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, Professor Amina Mama is, the Kwame Nkrumah Chair at the University of Ghana. Right. She is an amazing scholar. Point. I mean, just a scientific and a worker, but she's also just an amazing sister, a feminist, and someone who has been guiding many of us in terms of giving us a language and giving us the tools to understand ourselves. So this afternoon we're having Africans Rising is organizing really a conversation. There will be music, food.
Music by the Freedom Band.
Hey, music by
music by the Freedom Band.
What's the point of the revolution if we can't dance? Right? we it's hard work, it's difficult, it's painful and all, but we joy in the process. We have to be able to maintain a certain level of sanity, a certain level of lightness, and be with each other, because in the end, what do we want?
What do we want? So let's talk about the theme for a minute.
Yeah.
Feminism and Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what. Presently, and I'm speaking to the Ghanaian situation because that's my local, situation and what I'm exposed to. Presently, there's a certain unease, for lack of a better word, around the word feminism, where you have women, who are aware, who are conscious, who are literate, to a large extent, still wanting to disassociate from the word, from the word feminism, and insisting that I'm not feminist, that's hard. That's hard. How do we go around it? How do we? And it's a tough question. I don't even know how to choose my words, but how do we present feminism in its truest sense? For it to have the kind of relevance that it does have, but how do we position it such that it's so attractive and every African woman is running towards it? How do we achieve this?
We don't. No, the reason why I'm saying this is feminism is not going to put makeup to make men or women feel comfortable with it. It's not supposed to be comfortable. Feminism is uncomfortable. It says that I have the same rights to joy, to presence, to voice than anybody else. And that defies what we've been taught as women and men. So yes, most people will be uncomfortable with feminism. Men, of course, because it challenges their privilege. They want to hide behind religions, behind traditional practices. But the truth is, it's about power. It's about having access to women's bodies and time for you to relax. And feminism is saying no. We want our time for ourselves too. And we want our body in the ways that we want it. So yes, it's uncomfortable. And of course it's uncomfortable for many women because we have been trained and socialized to erase ourselves, to be invisible, to say, okay, we can find a way. Let's even try to play dumb so we can pass.
Stoop to conquer, we call it.
Let's try.
Right.
And let's be nice. Feminism is like, I'm not your nice girl. I'll do what I need. And it's okay if you feel uncomfortable. Losing privilege is about being uncomfortable.
Right.
Including for women who benefit from patriarchy.
Right.
So, and this is not just about Ghana, this is not just about today. when you want change, because we're talking about Pan-Africanism and feminism,
Absolutely.
Let me just put it the other way so that it's easier to understand. If African people are saying, we want to speak for ourselves, we want our resources for ourselves, would African men and African women be saying, let's find a way to say it in a nice way so that they can give us back our thing? Let me put it that way.
Right.
We are saying no. The same position that I have about reparation, about saying that as African we have to be bold, that I'm not about negotiating what is unnegotiable, which is you're taking away things from me.
Mine.
What is mine? That is the same position that I have about being a woman and about feminism. What we're asking for is not something that we should beg about. It's not something that is given to us, that should be given to us slowly. Okay, we'll give you one artifact, or we'll give you one little right as a woman. No, we need it all at the same time. And that's what is revolutionary, and that's what is difficult for people to hear. And of course, we will not have right away all of the masses. It has never been like that.
No.
We didn't get to independence by all the masses just deciding, we want to be independent.
No.
There has been people who spearheaded it. We didn't get to abolition of slavery because everybody just woke up in one morning and said, from now on we don't want. There has been people.
Resistance even.
Resistance and spearheading. To me, that is our position today. We are finding ourselves as movements, as organizations, as individuals, in a timeline of people who resisted, who fought before and made things happen before. And we're just doing our part.
Right.
We're just doing our part.
fantastic, everything that you've said. The biggest criticism I find against feminism and Pan-Africanism is this, argument about feminism at its core not being Pan-African.
Yes. and this is why we're having this conversation with Amina, because there are few things we need to clarify here.
Right.
There are few things we need to clarify here, because justice is one. You cannot say you want freedom and justice for African people and you want to deny justice to women.
So the African woman.
Yeah, it's one thing. It cannot be separate. So this idea about feminism being a, I don't know, European construct. For who? For what? I am African and I'm claiming my feminism based on my African value of equality, of balance that we know. And actually, I believe that many of the anti-feminists are more colonial ideas. I give a simple example all the time. My grandmothers and great-grandmothers never changed their names when they got married. They're Africans. You keep your name. It's only the generation of my mothers under colonization that I call Miss this.
Mrs.
Today, it's a feminist thing to carry your own name as a woman.
Right.
Our grandmother did it. So if you don't know your culture, you can start talking about feminism being European and something, and I tell you, it's all part of the resistance.
Right.
The men and the women that are talking about feminism being European, the amount of European things they do everything European, but when it comes to equality between men and women, all of a sudden,
African culture.
All of a sudden we have to be Africans. What is this?
Right.
It's just part of the resistance. You can find in your own culture all of the reasons for women to be dignified.
Right. Human dignity.
Human dignity.
Right.
And we don't need to be stuck nowhere. We are free people who evolve. African people are not, people who are stuck in a time machine somewhere.
Right.
We grow, we evolve. And we know about fundamentals of justice.
That point you make is so important and so crucial. This thing about the African not being stuck in a time machine. It's so profound, because anytime we think Africa, we are looking for a non-existent utopian existence that just isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Today's African is me. This is Africa. It's what we see now, but it's just that. So to be African then becomes to sort of contort and transform yourself into an existence that simply isn't real in 2022. For us to be European or West is to be today. It's funny because there are also very strange historical European concepts and positions that for whatever reason doesn't get stuck to the European forever.
No.
That's a very profound
we
one.
are not.
I wonder how we are going to get around it.
We have to get around it because the way I explain or help with it is, if we imagine for a second that slavery never happened, colonization never happened, even we never, white people or European didn't exist.
Right.
Do you think that Africans would not continue to evolve and develop civilization and continue to move? Like, would we be stuck in one way of being since then? No.
Absolutely not.
Things would have still changed. Of course, the world has been, working in a different way.
Right.
But I think we have all the rights and all the capacities to look at what is best in our ways, to evolve it and adapt it to what we have today, to look at the responses that we need for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
We are not chained.
Absolutely.
We are human beings.
Right. Absolutely. And to be fair, this is the cradle of civilization. Africa is, the hub of civilization. Now, a little birdie whispered in my ear that I should ask you about a very important phrase, the solidarity circle. So if you could just talk about that briefly, because I have some very important questions to ask you about jollof rice. So
I like that. Yes, solidarity circles, about Africans rising, we are looking at ways to resource our movements. And that's another bigger struggle. I think one of our biggest struggle is to find ways to resource our movements and make sure that Africans and members of Africans Rising are the ones seeding the work that we're going to be doing in the future. So these solidarity circles are what we are setting up in conversation, in exchanging, in sharing food together, but giving the opportunity to Africans to contribute financially to our own movement. It's not a given. It's not something that we have, and it needs to be done at large scales. Because if you want everyone to give a little, even just $1, you want 1 million people to give that dollar. And that's what we are trying to build with this solidarity circle. It's small, but anything that is big today started small.
Right. Please expand. So how does it work? If you could expand on it a little bit for us, how does it work?
What we are asking is simple, is for members, and first of all, we want people to join Africans Rising as a member.
Right.
You can be an individual, you can join. You could be a journalist, a sport person, an artist, whoever you want. You can join as an individual. You can have organization, movements, small groups in your district or bigger network in your country. You can join. And as you join, what we ask is that you have solidarity circles wherever you are, locally, of people who come together and support the movement. And that solidarity is not only financial. Of course, we want each one to give as small as it is, because we don't think it's ever small enough, because it's a way of committing. But it's also to be in solidarity. When we say solidarity is when we hear that something is going on in the DRC, that the people in Ghana do not sit and think that this is their problem. No, it's for all of us. Something is going on in Mali. The people in South Africa needs to know that it's their problem. Something is going on in Ethiopia, in Sudan. The people of Togo, the people of Nigeria needs to know it's their problem. So the solidarity circles are about being aware of where to be in solidarity with, and to bring your own resources, financial, knowledge, capacity, to push this movement forward. So join the movement, join the solidarity circle, bring what you have, because those small things are what's going to make a big movement.
A big change. The big change. So how? If I'm listening to this right now and I want to join Africans Rising, how do I do that?
Get on our website, africansrising.org. It's so simple. Just fill a form. Of course, you have to read this Kilimanjaro Declaration, agree with what we want, which is to push forward African liberation. We think that there is an unfinished business of African liberation. We're getting to 60 years of independence, and we're still not free from poverty. We're still not free from violence. We want you to read this Kilimanjaro Declaration, sign on to it, sign on the code of conduct of being human with each other, being in solidarity with each other, and you're on your way. You're already a member. Give $1 a month, more if you can. Join or create a solidarity circle where you are. Pay attention to the solidarity call that we are sending, because every time we are hearing somewhere, that African people are mobilizing and they're pushing for changes that will bring justice, dignity, or peace, we want to amplify that. We put it on our social media. We put out statements, whether it's Africans in Ukraine or, Africans in China or Africans in Morocco. We put it out, and we want other Africans to join to amplify that voice, to know about it, learn about it, speak about it, march about it, call embassies about it, do whatever they think is needed to change the situation. People need to call the Moroccan government about what is happening to migrants.
Right.
People need to call the Spanish government. They need to call them out. Right. And everyone can do it their ways. But people need to know.
Wow. Okay.
There's work.
There's a lot of work.
Every morning when you
There's
wake up and
work.
you are an African, you can go on the website. If you don't know what to do, you can go on the website. You can go on the Facebook page.
Right.
You can go on Twitter, and you can look at what is it that people are asking for solidarity for. Every morning when you wake up, there is solidarity that is needed in Haiti.
Right. Beautiful. Okay. So, today we have the event at the headquarters of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, and you will continue on, to do all the wonderful work that you are doing. My very last question to you, because you're a mother, a sister, somebody that all of us look up to, especially for us, my generation. We are raising the next generation of African children, of African leaders. Give us a few words. What is it that should be number one on our list as this generation that's raising the next, generation of Africans?
We have a difficult task to give to our children what we didn't receive. We need to love our children, not just because they're our children, but because they're African. We need to let them know that they're beautiful, that they're intelligent. We need to learn the history that was not taught to us, to be able to pass it on to them. Like, how do you raise African children that will change this continent in the future when you haven't received yourself the learning that we are talking about? So we have a challenge. We have to learn at the same time than our own children. And we have to be ready. What we don't know, that we learn it with them. It's a challenge to give what you didn't have.
Right.
That's where we are.
Right.
And to me, that's the fundamental, that's what will bring transformation. Transformation happens between generation when we are ready to do the sacrifice and give to the next generation more than what we have received. And some of our parents did it. They did it for us. You and I are sitting here because sometime some woman who did not go to school held our copybook and asked us to recite a lesson that they didn't understand anything about. Somebody took more energy, did more work for us to go to school. We were taken away, and I'm speaking now about women particularly. Most of the time, our mothers did the sacrifice, did more than they could do so that we could get ahead. Well, that's what we need to pass on to our own children.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. This has been our time with Coumba Toure. Last question. What's your favorite Ghanaian food? And then we're out.
Ooh, I like this food. Palava this. Yeah. I don't.
Palava sauce.
Palava sauce.
That will have to be in contumely.
Yeah. This too. It's just good. It's just good. It's spicy. Now something about the jollof. Please stop the jollof war with Nigerian saying the Ghana jollof is better.
As well.
The Nigeria jollof is good. Senegal is not in the run. Jollof jollof means wolof. Jollof is a region of Senegal.
Wait, so you are saying that Ghana and Nigeria should take a seat?
What I'm saying is please stop that jollof war. Because jollof is a region of Senegal where the Wolof people come from. And they are the maker of the rice. So you call it jollof rice because we don't call it jollof rice, we jollof. We call it chebujen. You call it jollof rice because it's not yours. So what is this war about? Somebody needs to educate these people. It all comes from Senegal.
Okay, so the next time you are coming, you have to bring yourself. You have to bring the rice, and then I will be convinced that Ghana and Nigeria need to take a back seat.
Please take a seat.
Okay.
Do some research, history research.
Thank you so much for being here. It's always beautiful. Always a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Beautiful.
And we hope that you are going to have a great time here.
It's beautiful already.
You are still going to enjoy our jollof anyway.
Yes, of course.
Palava sauce.
Palava sauce. Oh.
Thank you. And like she said, it's important for us as Africans to realize that we owe it to ourselves to make a change. And we need to make that change in small measures wherever we are, whatever corner we are. Get on the website, Africans Rising, learn. It's important to know if you can make change. So let's start from learning and let's start from being intentional about our lives as Africans. I'll see you next week. Have a lovely weekend. Bye. Bye.